What is up, YouTube? What is up, Canada? Matt McKeever here. It's Tuesday. I forgot my crypto hat. Oh, that's a slip. But anyways, it's Tuesday. We're going to be talking about crypto. I've got Tim here as well. Hey, Tim, how's it going?
I'm great. Thanks, Matt. How's everybody doing today?
I was doing well until I realized I wore the wrong hat, but I'll get over it. So anyways, there's been a lot going on in the last week in the world of Bitcoin and crypto and all kinds of craziness. Do you want to just start talking about some of the volatility in the market in general, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been about 6 weeks from the all-time high of nearly 80,000 Canadian, and we had a greater than 50% drawdown to roughly 37,500, depending on the exchange. So this has, people expected there would be less volatility the more institutional players were involved. And though we have seen 80% drawdowns in the past, from a whole dollar standpoint, a $43,000 dip is been pretty incredible. And I've been fielding a lot of calls from folks who are concerned. And I've tried to explain that if you're concerned, you've simply invested too much, and that the right allocation should mean that you can sleep well at night, knowing that this technology is still on trajectory to be adopted by millions and millions of people year after year after year. So the long-term thesis holds out, and who would have thought we would be, crying over a crash to $40,000? Like, all of these conversations have been foretold on Twitter 3 to 5 years ago. Again, the death of Bitcoin, it has fallen to 40K. What a world. So I'm hodling. It is nerve-wracking for me, who might have more than the average bear in terms of portfolio allocation to Bitcoin, but we've got a long way to go up still.
Yeah, it definitely, I'm sure, is jarring for people. I think it inherently is very telling just on, like, do you default to fiat, or do you default to just like whatever your balance is and the coins or tokens you hold, right? And I know for myself, it's fascinating to watch. I probably buy more Bitcoin when I feel the price is lower than where I think it should be. But outside of like a handful of those factors, it doesn't really impact me in the day-to-day, right? And unless someone was actively day trading in it, in theory, again, other than just the optics of it or the speed at which the volatility occurs, it really shouldn't make a big difference. And to me, at least, like, based upon the people I follow on Twitter, it became very apparent who believed in what they held and who was day trading and maybe felt like they got caught holding the bag, right? Yeah. The people that are day trading, they're very frustrated. They're smashing their keyboards. The people are just like, oh, well, my net worth halved, or like I lost, a third of my net worth, or whatever the case may be. Again, those individuals, they're more making an observation rather than having an emotional reaction to it. And I think that really, circles back to your point that if you've got the right asset allocation, or if you understand the risk or the volatility you're taking on, you hopefully won't be feeling the emotional roller coaster that a lot of other people are feeling this time of day.
Yeah, trading with leverage, or trading more than you can afford to lose in the short term, risking your health or your safety or your family's assets, all things that I would avoid in this type of market. And yeah, to be day trading with leverage, I mean, your hair would be on fire. Like, it would just, I don't know what you would do. I'm sure there was a lot of first-year crypto traders that got wiped out on their margin, right? And again, it might have happened more than once in the last 2 weeks, realistically, because there's been more than one huge, quick plummet. And I know that at least a few of our team members, or a few of my employees, definitely got burned and ended up losing it all because they didn't fully understand where their stop loss was, or where the margin call was going to occur, and they weren't ready to be able to top up. And so again, for anyone that's moving into these spaces, it's just so important. You really understand what you're getting into, and you go eyes wide open into what you could potentially be losing if you see that extreme volatility. For sure.
Awesome. But moving on kind of from that craziness, what else should we talk about, Tim?
Well, Elon Musk is trying to make a comeback to Bitcoin. I think you remembered that he held somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 billion in Bitcoin, so that he should put his Bitcoin hat on as well. And he got together with Michael Saylor, another noted billionaire / billion-dollar plus Bitcoin holder, just yesterday now, to announce that they had gotten together to address Elon's concerns about green mining, or mining using renewable energy. And on the face of it, that sort of sounds like a good idea. The Chinese have announced some potential regulations to cryptocurrency mining in China, mostly concerning using coal or non-renewable resources. And so the Americans, obviously with a stronger focus on ESG, or environmental, social, and governance related investing, thought maybe we can get ahead of this by putting together a coalition of miners, that is Bitcoin miners, to publish their energy consumption on a percentage basis, how much is renewable and how much is non. So again, on the surface, that sort of sounds like a reasonable thing to do. Bitcoiners are often libertarians, and therefore you're allowed to do whatever you like, but also you're allowed not to like it. And so some of the fireworks that started to blow up last night, just sort of almost immediately after this announcement from Michael Saylor, again, who had chaired this meeting with Elon Musk and the miners, was that I can't believe we're celebrating miner coordination, consolidation of power, concentration of the hash rate, and that this is a slippery slope, and it's only going to lead to Bitcoin miners trying to censor transactions. And those are the two perspectives. One, that this is reasonable and a smart thing to do in the face of regulation, and the other, that this is antithetical to Bitcoin and therefore must be stopped, or at least we should just give them a good dressing down on Twitter, which is what's been happening for weeks now since Elon waded in. But it did look last night like Michael Saylor might fall from grace based on his encouragement of this behavior, I guess. Yeah.
It's really fun and interesting to watch kind of from the sidelines. And again, there's certain aspects to this that I think are actually really difficult for the average person to, like, for us to really know, right? Like, again, there's what we see on Twitter, and then there's like what's behind the scenes, or what are the different layers, or potential drivers behind it. Because, like, again, on the surface, it seems quite reasonable, right? And it seems like a way that maybe they're just trying to get in front of a lot of energy FUD. And I saw like Nick Carter tweeting out, people just disclosing information essentially they already disclosed, but all agreeing to disclose it doesn't really make for a great conspiracy plot. But at the same time, I do understand the concerns that just as those individual actors continue to coordinate, there's the chance for greater and greater potential shenanigans to occur. But I don't like it. There's almost a hunger, it seems like, to constantly tear down any heroes or gods in the Bitcoin maximalist space. And I can understand why as well. But it was just interesting to see like huge pendulum swings. I don't think that this will really amount to too much. But then there was also kind of talking about mining, the stuff going on with China, right? And it sounds like maybe this time they're a little bit more serious than they've been in the past about trying to force only certain types of energy consumption on the mining occurring in China. And it sounded like, at least from what I was reading some summaries on, some major players were looking at actually moving out of country. I don't know if you looked at that much, Tim.
Yeah, I've sort of got mixed feelings about this because, again, a lot of people in the West especially want to present China as this unified front for communism and, a very regressive social structure, which I think is largely true. But at the same time, the Chinese have been sending students, of course, all over the world to study at the best universities that they can afford. And there's all this concern about international espionage. Well, the notion that we would then, if we've blocked Huawei from providing 5G technology in a lot of the Western nations, I mean, are we just going to have literally like Chinese mining equipment being shipped to places with low power? And it's like, I don't know what's going on with that. Sure, it's great that we're getting the hash power out of China, but it's still Chinese hashing power owned by somebody and being used somewhere where the power is cheaper. So, it's a double-edged sword. I I would want to make sure that that was firewalled or whatever needs to happen to make sure that those mining equipment is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I kind of hope that maybe just this summer a perfect storm could occur and we could really see CPUs and GPUs drop in value, right? Like if all of a sudden we saw a bunch of miners looking to relocate, if Ethereum moves from proof of work to proof of stake, if all of a sudden there could just be a wash of GPUs, that'd be kind of cool because I'd like to just grab a couple cheap things to play with. But again, I think I guess the one thing I continuously learn in this space from just watching Bitcoin Twitter and some of the Clubhouse chats and things like that is I think the real like Bitcoin stoics or the hardened vets are constantly viewing things through, Bitcoin solves this or Bitcoin doesn't need this, whatever the case may be. So like people are scared about energy. Well, Bitcoin doesn't really care about your energy consumption. And again, it is interesting. And I guess it's maybe comforting to see those individuals not get worked up over individual headlines. And for anyone that's maybe new to the space and just easing in, I think that, again, really looking towards people that have been in the space for a while and how they react versus, some of the Twitter trolls or individuals that are really focused on reactions or drama, like to drive engagement perhaps rather than really providing information.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, Nick Carter is excellent for dispelling FUD. If you're new to Bitcoin and you're not sure, and obviously it sometimes does sound scary, Nick Carter is the guy to follow. He has his FUD dice. So a bunch of different FUD outcomes that are on some 6-sided dice. And these notions are just repeated over and over. Mining centralization in China, 51% attack, green energy, block size debate. It happens over and over. And again, most of these ideas were brought up the day that Satoshi launched the white paper. You're not contributing anything new to sort of spout this stuff off from an uninformed perspective. So read up as much as you can, follow the people that can help guide you and be your Sherpa along the way. But I haven't seen anything yet that's affected my long-term confidence in Bitcoin as a technology and as a global network, which is, I think, probably what we'll come to next.
I mean, you lose one billionaire, you gain a new one. We got Ray Dalio saying that I saw some people tweeting saying that he said he preferred Bitcoin to bonds. So, you win some, you lose some, but I think Bitcoin just marches on. But switching gears, I'm excited to chat about the Lightning Network. So I know that you were pulling up some kind of cool resources for us to check out. So I'll pull it up on screen share here. Sure. And then beyond that, just in general, I find this very fascinating. We've ordered all the stuff to get a Bitcoin and a Lightning node up and running, but I haven't actually had time just to sit down and start playing with my stuff. So I'm excited to learn more about this space, but it's really cool just to see the different resources available and how simple it appears to be, at least.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's simple just yet, but I mean, it's getting more simple every day. And I think that's what's cool. And I was not able to quickly pull up the first diagram that I wanted to show. But this, I mean, gives you the idea in terms of one of the first internet demonstrations where we've got even a van somehow involved in Menlo Park, California, and then a few different nodes that are sort of around. So the ARPANET, which was, of course, developed, a precursor to the internet, developed as a defense research project. And, it would circle around to London, England, and then back, basically back to California. There were not, as you can understand, there were not very many nodes, or let's say very many people that had a modem that would communicate this way. And again, depending on the age of the listener today, before we had high speed, we had those modems that made funny noises dialing in, and it was like 56K when I left high school, and it was 14.4 when I started high school. So progress was made. And then we can see just a few years later in 82, the ARPANET, and then some of the educational institutions, of course, that had funding to get internet going on, University College London there, MIT here, that sort of thing. So we can see, okay, great, the internet is growing slowly. This is a good 40 years nearly divorced from today, where Some businesses still don't have websites yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked a little bit about Bitcoin adoption before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that we've talked too much about Lightning as a second
No, I
layer
don't think we have. Yeah.
scale Bitcoin. So this may be a little premature, but this is showing the state of the Lightning Network in early days. And so if you've just had your brain skip a beat because you thought, what are they talking about? Why don't we break down the Lightning Network for them? So one of the constraints of Bitcoin is that if you're trying to run a global network that is available to all, it must run on fairly basic hardware. And it must run on the internet, which is the only sort of global network that we have. So if you're trying to send a transaction from, say, San Francisco to Australia, it needs to get there at around the same speed as it would to anywhere else in the world, so that sort of everyone has a fair shot as a miner to process the transaction or form the block, or to validate the transaction just from a node. And so the size of the transaction needs to be constrained so that, again, it can run on a basic personal computer. It doesn't need a server or Amazon Web Services or anything like that. And the block times we know are every 10 minutes, and the block sizes we know are about 1 megabyte. So the current blockchain is somewhere in the order of 300 gigabytes big. And so that if your laptop only has a 500 gigabyte hard drive, you're going to have most of the blockchain just taken up with that. So one of the solutions to this sort of basic problem, and it's really just like the physical limits of nature, which is that people are constrained by the resources that they have. And the people in, let's say, the less developed countries, they have even fewer resources than we do. And like, I'd like a new computer. I'm sure they would too. So what we've proposed, I say we, the Bitcoin community, is a second layer on top of Bitcoin called the Lightning Network. And this would allow for transactions to be made peer-to-peer rather than telling the entire network, and that will increase the privacy. So Bitcoin is meant to be both peer-to-peer and trustless. But this is setting up a situation where if I wanted to send some money to Matt, I trust Matt most of the time. So I'm willing to send him maybe more than I owe him, and he'll send me the change back once we're done doing business. Or the notion of a bar tab is a good way to explain it, where when you go to a restaurant or a nightclub, you're willing to leave your credit card for the evening so that you don't have to pay every time you have a drink. And that really helps to reduce the total number of transactions that will appear on the blockchain, because those transactions are only the final settlement. And so it's really an area of study nearly as big as Bitcoin itself. And this was the state of that Lightning Network, I want to say 2 years ago or so, when it was really first developed and launched. And the interesting thing about Lightning Network is that it is an open protocol standard, just like Bitcoin, meaning there are multiple people that create software for it, Lightning and Eclair and so on and so forth. So this was that early network, just like we saw with the internet. And then this is a live snapshot of that Lightning Network today, showing that there are 9,600 nodes representing 41,500 individual channels. And so, we made that analogy that, okay, mostly I trust Matt, so I'm willing to create a channel size a bit larger than I need to. Well, as long as Matt has a channel to somebody that I want to talk to, we can flow the value through these channels individually. So there's an incentive to create a good network of channels. And you can see that incentive has, again, moved the needle for the Lightning Network to really scale Bitcoin without having to centralize mining or centralize nodes by having a much larger block and therefore a much larger blockchain. Because we set the 1 megabyte parameter for the block size fairly arbitrarily. I say arbitrarily in that it was designed, again, to be run on any hardware, but we can just as easily all decide to change it to 10 or 1,000 or more megabytes, which will, again, bloat the block size, bloat the blockchain, and mean that only folks running Amazon Web Services, say, or massive data centers, or who have the budgets to keep up with the blockchain that big, will be able to be the nodes. And when you have that concentration, of power, you then have the opportunity for governments, say, to censor transactions by just targeting those few nodes. So that's sort of the block size debate really quickly, and why the Lightning Network was developed as a layer 2 solution. And if you have any objection to all of this, you're free not to use it, number one. But number two, just realize that the internet is already a series of about 10 layers. So there's not too much different here. It's just when you're coming to it new for the first time, it might seem a little strange that we're already making a layer 2 when you barely have any Bitcoin yet at all.
Yeah, absolutely agree, and really appreciate that breakdown, Tim. And just like as a little tangential note, playing around with this website and stuff, it's really cool. You can click on any individual node, guys, and you can like kind of see the connections and all that. But I think what's been really fascinating to me with learning more about Lightning and stuff is in some of the Clubhouse chats, hearing about people like creating like Telegram chats, right? And you can send money to each other on Telegram. Obviously, as Tim was breaking down for us, the cost of doing business can be really fractionalized there. So it can be like, I forget what that works out to, but like 1,000th of a penny for that transaction fee rather than dollars. And again, as you kind of slice and dice it, I just see all kinds of cool and novel uses for it, or like I've overheard people explaining cool and novel uses for it. The one that really stood out to me was the idea of creating communication channels where spam becomes it's essentially de-incentivized. And so one of the real issues right now with spam is it's essentially so cheap that and for all intents and purposes, there is no cost to creating spam. Whereas if you could create a email network, a chat room, whatever you want to call it, where it costs a sat or 10 sats or 100 sats to send that message or 1,000 sats to send a link. Again, there's just a really cool way that we can dynamically price things and hopefully really disincentivize a lot of the bad behavior we currently get in certain aspects of social media or the internet or things of that nature. And I can really, like as a small influencer, really see a lot of value in being able to directly interact with the audience with some of these cool and novel approaches. Like, again, the idea of having a Telegram group where people have to pay money to be able to send a message in it or send a question. On the surface, that doesn't sound that much different than a Patreon or Super Chats, but I think in practice, it becomes wildly different, right? Just this week, Twitter announced like Twitter Spaces, right? And what that revenue breakdown was going to be. And all of a sudden you saw dramatically how little the creators actually make. I forget, creators got to keep like 50 or 60 cents on the dollar. 30 cents goes to like Google or Apple. And then I think Twitter was taking 10 or 20 cents. And all of a sudden you realize that like, there's a lot to this running the network, right? And all of a sudden, as a content creator, if I could just have my own Lightning node, create my own Telegram chats or my own applications to use with Lightning, again, it creates so many just different options where there's no gatekeepers. And that's one of the things, again, that I think will become more and more central to a lot of these conversations is, as we see Rebel News being blocked from PayPal and all sorts of other Louder with Crowder has had his issues, and before that, WikiLeaks, and all these different information sources or content sources that get barred from a lot of the mainstream media or gatekeepers. Again, it's going to be a lot harder for them to necessarily go in and play in this domain or regulate this domain to the degree that they can currently do just on our existing monetary systems. So I don't know. To me, this is fascinating. I really see a lot of potential in this space, and I'm really looking forward to spending the summer just getting my own Lightning node up and playing around with some of the channels and seeing what sort of shenanigans we can get into.
Yeah, again, I think it's so cool. Just like with the internet, when innovation is pushed out to the edge of the network, meaning that there's no CEO that you have to run these new or good ideas by, and the CEO has different values and is older than you are and doesn't want to embrace technology. But with these open protocols like Bitcoin and the Lightning Network, again, if you have a good idea and you create some piece of software in London, Ontario, that software can benefit every user of the network, and it increases the value of the network anywhere in the world instantly. It's just such a cool different paradigm, I guess, for doing business, and I think it really going to be transformative on the scale of the internet itself. Just the ability to send value in small amounts anywhere in the world instantly. Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the future. And again, I really see a huge potential here with the Lightning Network. So looking forward to learning a lot more about it. Just a reminder for anyone that's watching this, I hope you guys have enjoyed these Crypto Tuesdays where Tim and I just kind of sit down and chat about what we see going on in the world of Bitcoin, crypto, NFTs, and all kind of the adjacent spaces in this world. If you guys have been enjoying these videos, smash the like button, hit subscribe. We are going to be going on a bit of a hiatus, so we're slowing down the content for the month of June, so we're going to try and dial back the amount of content we're creating. So we'll hopefully be back in July, but just, stay tuned. We'll let you know on Instagram, on Twitter, on all the social media platforms. We're going to rejig a bunch of the different content we're doing here on my YouTube channel. But again, hope you guys have been enjoying it. Give us your feedback in the comments section because it does impact the content we decide to create. And again, really appreciate it, Tim, and looking forward to chatting in the future about crypto with you again.
My pleasure. Thanks again, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks.